So I thought I'd do another update on the little bit of a tornado risk that's going to happen today. And that risk is for the Ohio River Valley, mostly. So southeast Missouri into potentially as far as eastern Kentucky. We'll see. That is part of that is for a tornado risk, and there's also wind risk and a hail risk. So not an extreme risk, but I do think that there could be a tornado today, but it'll take a few things to go right. Tomorrow, some storms possible in Texas with mostly a hail risk. The day after that, basic storms and nothing too obvious the days after that. So we can take a look at the weather models at the moment. Okay, so we do have 12Z GFSN, which is nice. So here's our trough. It's not a very big trough. Uh, it extends from Kansas to Indiana, basically. You know, a lot of times you want to see, particularly for these setups that are further to the east, you want a bit bigger of a trough because that will more effectively bring in that elevated mixed layer, and is just more favorable in general, maybe for forcing as well. So it is a closed low of 500 millibars, which is often pretty favorable for tornado setups. Might give it a little boost. Um, you can see the trough does not extend very far back, at least not with very strong winds that extend very far back. However, in the main risk area, we trace those 500 millibar winds back. They do end up in the arid southwest, which for the jet stream is kind of what you want for a tornado risk because drier air aloft steepens lapse rates and that strengthens storm updrafts. So going forward with time, you can see that trough kind of moves east, almost a little south. And you can check real quick the height falls. So looking at here, 573 height, see a small dip, but overall not super strong height falls, particularly on the southern side, which is usually what you see. So there will be some forcing for the storms to initiate. I could certainly see, particularly over in the southern and western area of the risk, I could see some supercells forming. We can check 700 millibar winds, and this is something you can use to kind of show the potential for a cap, which cap can be good sometimes, it can be bad sometimes. Too much of it will be bad, but usually if you have strong 700 millibar winds from the west, you will get a cap to work in, and that will kind of keep storms and just rain in general from being too widespread, which is actually often what you do want to see for setups in this area of the country. You want to see a bit of that cap, so you want to see a little bit of warmer, drier air aloft, not too low, but that can hold off storms, and so that when they do fire, the storms are kind of by themselves, and that will increase the tornado risk because the storms aren't being interrupted by any storms around them, so they can take full advantage. Not quite a closed low, pretty close to a closed low at 700 millibars. We do see a pretty strong jet of about 40 knots, some 50 knots in there. Yeah, 40 to 50 knot mid-level jet. And it is pretty much straight from the almost straight from the west. So what that tells me is that based off what we've seen so far, there will probably be an elevated mixed layer, which is favorable for tornadoes in this particular instance. So yes, strong winds. Now we can look at our low-level jet. Now this is going to be a little interesting. So we have a closed low. Not super strong winds, but not bad at all. So you see our, by 21Z, a little bit of a closed low up here in northern Illinois. And these winds are quite veered, so that might decrease the tornado risk a bit, because it might bring in some drier air into the low levels, and it's not a whole lot of curvature, which curvature is going to be favorable for those storms. So yeah, not a super perfect low-level response. Low-level jet of 30, maybe 40 knots, somewhere in there. So in terms of speed, it's not bad, but it's just pointing kind of not in the direction that tornadoes like. You'd like to see the winds coming straight from the south, so from the Gulf of Mexico, you want to see those winds going quickly northward, and that'll help with inflow as well. So now we can check dew point. So 21Z, close low in northern Illinois. Now we can check what the surface winds are like at 21Z. So this is interesting, and this could be something that potentially decreases the tornado risk, at least in the realm of low-level thermodynamics, which still might be good, but not as good as they could be. Low-level surface low is out here in southern Missouri. Remember, close low for 850 millibars was up here. So we're going to see much more backed winds at the surface than we do at 850 millibars. And what that might do is that might lead to the low levels being somewhat humid, but with a little bit of drier air above that. And that's not very favorable for tornadoes. Usually it's not going to totally ruin the tornado risk, but it's going to lower it. So here's our low. Another thing to note, we can go to our dew points as well. So our surface winds, one of the issues with this was our surface winds weren't super strong. They're particularly strong here in southeast Missouri, which is kind of why I think the tornado risk could be shifted a little bit further to the west. But yeah, we see 10 knot winds, which most tornado risks you're gonna like to see like 15 knot surface winds. And you know, with that, we see our temperatures are, one thing that will be very important with the setup that will determine who could see tornadoes and who will not see tornadoes is the warm front. So this is a little interesting. This might be convection that's causing these cooler temperatures. But we do see a little bit of a warm front that does still work its way up. And anything north of the warm front will probably be elevated, maybe a hail risk, but not a tornado risk. Anything south of the warm front will have that tornado risk and probably the hail risk, because we were talking about that elevated mixed layer that's going to be working its way in, and that'll likely increase the risk for hail in the area. All right, let's go to a recent run from a higher resolution model. That way we can kind of get a better look at certain things like what the storms might look like and go out on some environmental soundings. So right now we have some storms that have been in these storms probably that have the highest risk of any sort of tornadoes. This isn't as impressive as I was seeing earlier. Uh, let's take a sounding to figure out if we can see anything as to why. Okay, so this sounding is decent for tornadoes. There are a few things that are kind of wrong with it, though. Um, so we were talking about, those westerly winds are bringing in that dry air aloft, and that's going to increase the upper level instability and lapse rates. At the surface, we do kind of see a little bit of a cap, not a very strong one, but we do see a separation between that LFC and LCL, which is indicative of that. We also, as we were kind of talking about earlier, we do see the winds, there is directional shear in the lowest kilometer. And it doesn't seem to do too much in this sounding, but usually you want to see those 1 kilometer winds be pointing in the same direction as the winds at the surface for tornadoes. Deep layer shear is favorable, and that's another reason why I think we could see some supercells with hail potentially. And overall, not a bad sounding for tornadoes. I do think they should probably shift the 2% risk a little further west, based off everything I've been seeing. Let's go a little further forward in time. We're still with these storms in southeast Missouri. Yeah, I mean, a little bit of that cap that works its way in. So if these storms can stay surface-based or start surface-based, then that is going to increase the tornado risk. Once again, a lot of curvature in the lowest kilometer that is likely decreasing the tornado risk. Winds at 850 millibars are almost due westerly, so that's not very favorable. But with that said, we do still see a pretty strong low-level jet. 5 kilometer or half a kilometer, winds are blowing at 40 knots. So, that's not bad at all. It's just going to be a risk that isn't as crazy as it could have been. One more. Yep, same thing. Strong elevated mix layer. Good curvature in the photographs, although a little too much in the lowest kilometer. So yeah, I do think, with all this in mind, I wouldn't be surprised if one of these storms in southeast Missouri that works its way uh, southeast does produce a tornado or two. Um, but at the moment, I'm not thinking tornado outbreak, and neither is the Storm Prediction Center. Yeah, let's check where the warm front is for this. It's 5 hours out. Okay, so yeah, this is all happening near the surface low. That might increase convergence a little bit. It's not a strong surface low. Uh, but yeah, warm front is kind of up in here, and those storms are to the south. So I mean that's still, we're still looking at a little bit of a tornado risk today. Once again, not the highest tornado risk, but given the upper level instability and strong deep layer shear with decent low level jet, even though it's not a super backed, even though the winds aren't very backed, I still do think that there could be a few tornadoes today. Can't rule out a strong tornado, but I'm hesitant to say that given just the low risk, or the conditional risk, I should say, in general. We'll check significant tornado parameters, see if we're missing any location. So this is kind of just going to show where a tornado risk might be. It's not always perfect at guessing how high the tornado risk is. So, yeah, it's kind of focused on that same area where Missouri and Kentucky meet. A little bit down here. I'm not sure if we'll get storms down here much. But, yeah, I mean, there's a bit more of a cap. Drier above, a little bit of a dry pocket above moist air. That's once again because of those strong, that strong change in direction in the lowest kilometer. Um, yeah, not quite as favorable down there, but if we get storms down there, there's a chance we could get some hail maybe. And this is probably the last sounding we take. So, overall, it's a decent tornado risk. Once again, would not be surprised to see a few tornadoes down here. I wouldn't be surprised if nothing happens because, I mean, there's a few things that are lowering the risk. We're also seeing a downtrend based off of the simulated radar. But with that said, uh, still something to take note of. I mean, you never know with these kind of setups. Weird ones where the trough is kind of coming down from the north, but it could work. We'll see. So, I think that'll do it for the video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next forecast.